Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Now That's What I Call Slots. And today we are joined by Henry McLean from 4ThePlayer. Hello.
Hi, great to meet you.
It's a pleasure. We're going to be looking at 12 Trojan Mysteries, but before we do, we'll just give a brief description about what this little video interview is about. So, sounds within slots, the soundtrack, the scores, for me, they're quite undervalued or underappreciated. So, we just want to bring some light onto why certain sounds were made, why certain scores were included, and how they actually impact the player's experience while playing the game. But like we said, first of all, we've got Henry. Henry, can you just explain a bit about your role within 4ThePlayer and actually 4ThePlayer itself?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, my name's Henry. I'm the commercial and marketing director at 4ThePlayer. So I'm involved in everything commercial and everything marketing, right down to the streamers, to the affiliates, to talking to the press, as well as marketing the games.
Perfect. And obviously, we're talking about sound. Let's just take a quick little listen on 12 Trojan Mysteries.
Sure.
We'll start the demo now. So that's the kind of the sound in the base game. Can you just explain a bit of the inspiration behind the soundtrack for 12 Trojan Mysteries?
Sure. So normally when we're looking at slots and looking at the sound design, we take a thematic approach to the audio, but this time we thought we'd try something slightly different. The music for 12 Trojan Mysteries is a bit more Vegas-y and kind of a classic sound. Hopefully you heard that when the game loaded and played. It's a sound that kind of conjures up instant excitement. It's our first attempt at generic wind sounds. We thought we'd kind of create something that the player would recognize as something that's ours. Kind of a bit like Sonic branding, if that makes sense. Other people do it really well. So I'm sure in lockdown, everyone's heard the Netflix dudum a million times. And straight away, you instantly think of kind of entertainment and fun and that you're going to be watching something good. So we wanted to try and get that connection with 4ThePlayer. So when you hear these sounds, you kind of instantly think, okay, that's good. It's going to be 4ThePlayer.
Perfect. And what sound is it? I'm not going to ask you to kind of like mimic the sound, but is it kind of like the dudun sound?
No, there's a few different wind sounds.
Okay.
So on the different types of winds, there's different big wind sounds that are sounds that you might sound familiar with, but we put a 4ThePlayer twist on them and try to make them our own. So we're going to be trying to use them in games going forward and kind of getting feedback from players.
Okay. Yeah, we've just got a big win now, and I can't remember what the song is, but it's
It sounds strangely familiar.
yeah.
So it's a public domain sound,
Okay.
and what we've done is put our own twist on it and try to make it more Vegas-y, if that makes sense. So trying to connect it to the excitement, the kind of sound you'd hear in a casino.
No, it works definitely. So can you just walk us through like the sound effects when a player spins the reel? Like, how difficult? Sorry, we'll answer that one first before we move on to the next one. So yeah, can you just walk us through the sound effects when the player does spin the reel?
Sure. So the way we approach our sounds is slightly different. We don't make our sounds in one continuous loop. We actually make lots of small sounds that are all connected together. Now, the reason that we do that is because we don't know what the win result's going to be until the RNG has done that win, and we don't know how long the sound will be. Sometimes when you play a game, you're spinning and the sound plays and then it stops, simply because the loop's quite short. So with ours, what we do is we create lots of little sounds that we stitch together as the win happens, creating that big win. So the idea being that big win sound, sorry. So the idea being is that there's a perfect match between the big win in the game and the sounds.
And you've kind of touched on yourself with creating your own little kind of 4ThePlayer unique sounds that people instantly recognize. But how difficult is it within the industry to actually innovate sound effects within titles and just to make them new and enticing for players?
It's actually quite hard to innovate in sound. We've got quite a few interesting ideas up our sleeve, and there's some things we're looking at doing in the future that we can't share too much around now. But we think sound's a really important element in the game, and something, like you said earlier, that a lot of people don't really spend enough time looking at.
And as your company name suggests, 4ThePlayer, you're a company that develops slots with the player in mind. Can you just explain, when composing and selecting the audio for this title, that the player remained kind of at the forefront of every decision and the impact on the player?
Yes, definitely. The first thing is it must not be annoying. The amount of times we've all played games, and you open a game, you think, "Oh, it looks awesome." You're excited by the theme, you're excited by the feature. You start spinning, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what is that sound?" Now, I always play with sounds on, so quite often, if I play a game and I don't like the music, I will close that game. So the first thing we do is when we're creating audio for a game, is we actually play it in isolation. So we play the audio over and over again when it's not even in the game to think, does this grate on us, or is it a positive earworm, for want of a better phrase? And if we think it's positive, we then put it into the game. We'll then put it into the game, and that's where it gets quite interesting, because sometimes when you put it into the game, the sound that sounded amazing outside the game suddenly goes, oh, that doesn't fit at all. It either jars with the theme, it doesn't connect with the kind of balance of the game, so we can make lots of changes. And that's often where the biggest changes happen, is when it's been implemented in the game. So that's probably the biggest thing we do, is just constantly sound test our audio to make sure it doesn't become irritating, and to make sure it also kind of helps with the emotion of the game. It really helps take the player on that kind of magical journey.
Perfect. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to trigger the buy feature, because the next question is going to relate to it. So we'll just I'll turn the audio up on the game, 1 second. We'll just have a quick listen to the buy feature. Okay, so we just triggered it there. A few things kind of stood out to me. Kind of that whole kind of Vegas kind of sound atmosphere that you get, certainly with the bells ringing, and then you've also got kind of the theme of like the Trojans kind of mixed in there. So once triggering the 3 spins round, the player's instantly kind of surrounded by endless sounds, which is cool. And like you said, it's not annoying like you mentioned. But what was the reason behind this? And can you just explain why certain sound effects were included, and how does it add to the overall theme of not only just the 3 spins round or the bonus round, but the game in general?
Yeah, certainly. It's interesting you picked up on the bell, because the bell was quite a late addition. We put a bell in our first game in 6 Wild Sharks, and players actually really enjoyed it, and streamers were like, woohoo, the bell, and it really instantly connected with them. We think it's because it's instantly recognisable. They know when they hear it, they know they're in for a good time, they know something exciting. It also goes back to the era of when you're in a casino, and do you remember the old-fashioned kind of hand pays, when a thing would come up saying massive win, call assistant, and the bell goes off?
Yeah.
It's that kind of like excitement that's created in the game. In terms of the other sounds in the bonus round, the reason we chose all the sounds that we did is because this game's all about excitement and suspense. We really wanted to kind of build the excitement and the suspense in the sound in this game, because the Trojan horses in this game can turn into any symbol. So we wanted that kind of excitement to kind of be in the audio track as well. It's almost like a bit like a battle. It's the player versus the game, and we wanted sound effects to kind of replicate that. So you can hear swords clashing, the kind of coins paying, all building up into kind of a really nice effect for the player.
Mm-hmm. Cool. We're just gonna keep playing this round because we've got two spins left, and I just want to see what the sounds are like when you get the wins.
Sure.
It's not looking like a massive one at the moment. Last spin, no, is it? Okay.
How was the last spin?
We only won £12.30, but we did spin once. But I mean, the sound is quite best way to describe it. Quite gamey, quite Nintendo-y vibes, if that makes sense. Like that.
Yep.
So
Yep, it's quite classic. We deliberately went with something, like I said earlier, it's not at all thematic. Like if you go back to our first slot, 9K Yeti, you've got the wind in the mountains, you've got the howling sounds, you've got the roaring of the Yeti. It's very much thematic. Whereas on this one, there's no Trojan. Not that I'm sure what Trojan sounds would be, but there's no Trojan horses or sounds like that. It's much more of a kind of a Vegas classic theme.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so moving forward, how can 4ThePlayer innovate its slot soundtrack and score and sound effects to keep the player engaged in like your titles? And also, is there actually more room to kind of innovate or to become more innovative from music within the slots?
Very interesting question. One really good thing about audio and the future is that file size is becoming less and less of an issue. With 4G or mobile and hopefully soon 5G penetration coming out, we can worry less about sounds file sizes and increase the quality. Because the biggest thing with audio is obviously the smaller the file size, the lesser the quality. But it's the same with everything in slots. The better the file size, the better the game will be. So the audio quality is going to get better for everyone, which is great. In terms of innovation, we've got some really cool ideas. As I said earlier, I can't share too much because we're still testing them at the moment. But we've got some cool ideas about audio, about how it can do different things to the player and kind of really connect on that emotional level with the player. We're constantly looking at ways of innovating, especially outside slots and in the entertainment space. Lots of entertainment products do things very cleverly with audio, things that haven't yet been done in slots. So we still think there's a lot of kind of area for innovation in this space.
Perfect. Well, that's everything from me. Just one thing, where can players experience 12 Trojan Mysteries?
Well, 12 Trojan Mysteries is on general release now, and you can find it in your favourite Idrisil-powered casino.
Perfect. Henry, thank you for taking time out to join us today. It's been great, and thank you for being the first ever on Now That's What I Call Slots.
My pleasure.
Thank you.